Hey there, welcome to ATL and 29, a podcast that looks at the NBA from the starting point of Atlanta. My name is Kevin Chouinard. I'm here with Glenn Willis and Tyler Jones, recording on a Sunday night, I guess early in the official part of free agency after the moratorium. How are you feeling about the Hawks' approach to free agency at this point?
What approach?
Okay, that's fair.
uh, I guess I think they've been limited by a number of things. One is the trade, just the unique variables that goes into all the shenanigans to ultimately get DeJounte to New Orleans and the Hawks to get Dyson Daniels and Larry Nance. So there was a lot of like moving parts. So that's probably what's holding them up. And also, I'm not sure how much money they're offering or even who they're looking for in free agency right now. We can have an idea based on the current roster. They probably need more shooting and more ball creation. But looking at the available free agents, it's kind of hard to see who exactly fits that mold. But I mean, something could change in the next like 15 seconds or so. It's pretty fluid right now. But right now, it seems like the Hawks are kind of standing pat, waiting on guys to come down to their price.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I think I always use the phrase order of operation, right? So, for example, if they want to do a sign-in trade of a guy who's not going back to the team he was on, they got to get below the first apron. To do that, they got to move presumably Capella and maybe Hunter too, depending upon what else they might do and who maybe Bogey, I don't know. Um, but if that's the first thing they're going to try to sign and trade, then they got to move salary before they can even kind of get to the sign and trade. If they want to use an exception, which hasn't been their history, then that might not be dependent on other moves. And so the kind of transaction they are prioritizing to go after the player, the transaction type that would apply to a player they want to target really depends upon kind of how the logistics play out in terms of them make that happen. So it's really complex to kind of sort all of that out, and I think that stuff does take time. Other things I think of is if they're for example going to move Capella, has the center market shaken out from a free agency standpoint, trade standpoint, et cetera, right? Who's left without a center? Who needs a center like Capella? And so the market has to kind of settle given where the Hawks are with their cap sheet, given what they're likely to try to do transaction wise, things have to settle in this post July 6th kind of
Yeah.
timing before they start kind of doing anything big. That makes sense to me. So not a big surprise that they haven't done anything other than the DJ trade so far.
And I think just to add to that, Glenn, I think like a lot what's holding up the league right now is what is Utah doing with Laurie and what are the Pelicans ultimately trying to do with Brandon Ingram? It's seeming like they're not neither. I'm not sure with the Jazz if Danny Ainge just kind of he just waits for his price and until that happens, he's just not going to do anything. But with the Pelicans, it feels like they're clearly looking for a certain type of starting center, not just a starting center, to get in return for Ingram. But I don't think the market is bearing that out for them, and so they're kind of in like a holding pattern. But that in turn holds up the Hawks, who have 18 centers at the moment, and probably aren't going to like. I would wager the Hawks aren't going to go into the season with Okongwu, Nance, and Capella on the roster, just based on that. Just from a pure like somebody's going to be mad that they're not playing. Like, and you don't want to go into training camp with that level of bad vibes from your center position, such an important position. So,
Yeah, and going from memory, Bruno's guarantee date is I think in 3 days. I think three
yeah, three
days, the
days.
10th, I
Yep.
think.
Yep, July 10th is now. I wonder if they can move that back again, but we'll see on that. It'll be interesting. It's interesting. I think they'd like to keep Bruno, but they won't be too shaken up if they have to waive him. But that'd be kind of I think it's interesting in a variety of issues because I feel like there's the biggest issue I see with right now with trading Capella is you probably gonna want a rim protector back in return, a younger rim protector, perhaps like a bigger player than a Congo and Nance. But like, who's that player in the market right now other than Clint Capella? So that's kind of that might be holding them up as well. And then they're like, well, we're gonna try to get value. Like to me, it just feels like the Hawks are in a position of relative strength in that they have depth at the center position, so they can just wait on a team to match their price for the player. But they got to be careful. Like you got to also be careful that their roster is balanced.
So, as Glenn pointed out, if the Hawks were to do something, it would be a rather intricate process. They'd have to get their ducks in a row. But they, if you want to do something, you typically can do it. Is there anybody that is there anybody that around the league that has been signed in the past few days? You're like, oh man, that's a missed opportunity. I wish the Hawks had tried to make something happen in that direction.
Well, I mean, it's so hard to know because the player has to have interest in being in Atlanta too, right? I mean, I made it publicly known on Twitter that I liked DeRozan's fit, but DeRozan had to pick Atlanta, and I didn't necessarily think. I thought the path that might be there was to get him back on the market next year by giving him a 3-year deal, the first-year deal guaranteed, and that might be something DeRozan wanted to do. But he picked Sac. He's from LA. That's not super close to LA, but it's
No, it's
California.
not.
You know, but
But Glenn,
Cody,
Glenn,
Caleb Martin, there's a few guys. So
no, I was just going to add with DeRozan, but another factor is that I don't think the Bulls wanted to take back salary. And so
right,
I think another factor is like maybe the Hawks weren't interested, but if the price was you have to trade like either DeAndre Hunter or Clint Capella and give up another asset to the Spurs, I just think that was just a zero non-starter. Like the Hawks aren't in a position to be selling assets at the moment. They're still too asset poor. So that could be another factor. And like they considering the price of getting DeRozan wasn't that expensive. I do feel like if the Bulls weren't willing to take on an asset, weren't willing to take on a contract, then the Hawks were kind of stuck in that they just didn't have the resources to match what the Sacramento Kings could do for the Bulls. Because it's not
yeah,
like sign and trade is not just the player has to agree. It's also like the Bulls have to ultimately agree to whatever the compensation is, and to get that, the Spurs got a uh, some type of asset in 2031. So that
yeah. They
I
got
feel like
a
that's a fact. Yeah,
Spurs got an unprotected pick swap in 2031. I think that point is exactly right. Though I don't think the Hawks are in position to be giving out draft picks to facilitate things and stuff like that. So it makes sense that the Kings ended up in better position to do that. And then for me, I'm looking at guys like you know, I even said like I put a tweet out like a week ago on like guys that are young that could be up and coming guys. The Hawks, Kessler Edwards, a few other guys. I mean, Javante Green is still out there. Javante Green would be a great addition for the Hawks, right? Landry Shamit's more of a kind of pretty good on offense, pretty good on defense. Javante Green is one of the better defenders out there and would be helpful. Didn't know what would happen with Caleb Martin. He's going to Philly. I mean, this wasn't like this like class of like really really high end players, but there's a lot of really good role players that are moving and kind of landing. But the Hawks put themselves into this cap sheet status. They did it to themselves, and so where they are right now, they have it's more work to open up space to make a move for a guy who really would be an impactful rotation piece than for teams that have been kind of driving for more flexibility. And it's kind of funny because Travis's line when he was in Atlanta the whole time was financial flexibility, right? The Hawks have the opposite of financial flexibility right now. They would have to manage a 3, 4, 5 part move in some cases to land a guy that really would be a difference maker for them.
Speaking of draft picks and assets and the Sacramento Kings, do the proceedings of the past few days make you feel better that Kings pick will convey next summer?
I do, but the only downside is I'm not sure the Kings really elevated themselves, more as they're able to hold their position, which is play into like 6th to 5th seed, just because the West is so tough. Like it's gonna like to me, it's just gonna come down to like the West is just gonna come down to which team's healthy during the season. Um, because the Kings on paper look like a good team, though. You, they probably still want some better rim protection than Alex Lynn. I feel like they're still missing that, and they probably now need to find more shooting. Weirdly enough, because they traded Barnes and Vasenkov. But overall, like they're probably going to be in the market for somebody like Davis Bertans, who the Hawks should also be in the market for. But I think another aspect of what the Hawks, just to get back to the Hawks real fast, another thing they're struggling with is it's not like they have a ready-made position for these guys to come in and play a guaranteed 20, 25 plus minutes every night. Like, even with the trade of DeJounte Murray, they already have so many guys that are like guaranteed to play. It's like it's tough to get somebody who like a Hayward Highsmith come in on the Hawks and be either your 11th to 12th man. So um, that's another aspect of what's kind of hurting the Hawks right now in the free agent market. We're on the lower end guys, mid level and below.
Do you have thoughts on Sacramento, Glenn?
I mean, I think them having more creation, I think it's going to help De'Aaron Fox. DeRozan has become a more efficient player the last 3 years. It'll be interesting to see if he can play as fast as the Kings want to play all the time. That's not always been his thing, so that's a little bit of a thing that makes you scratch your head a little bit and think like, how's that part going to go? But last year, if it wasn't him and Malik Monk, if it wasn't one of those two kind of running things, they really got bogged down. As gifted as Sabonis is as a guy who can move the ball, you still got to have a guy who's initiating. And I mean, DeRozan's really good in late shot clock. DeRozan is an absolute pro getting to his spots. And I think playing and DeRozan wasn't really playing with a point guard, in Chicago really at all, and I think playing off of Fox will help him if he can adapt to it being a little bit of a different experience to play off of a guy like Fox. So the pick is protected 1 through 12, I think, in the draft next year, and then it goes to 1 through 10 the year after that. I'm going from memory. I think that's right. And so I do think also it's just I think the continuity. I believe in continuity. You know, they they found a way to get a contract to make sure Mike Brown was in place and committed to kind of what they're doing there. And I think the roster continuity does help them. And if you kind of look at what's going on in the Western Conference, there's a lot of teams that I like. Phoenix to me is a big TBD. Like, how healthy are they going to be? The Clippers, what are they even going to be? Right. So if some of those older teams don't get kind of the gain coverage from the top end of their roster, they could end up, sixth or so in the Western Conference. Maybe a little luck get to five. I don't know that I see them getting higher than that. Um, and so I do think that I don't know. I think that Hawks getting that pick next year got like maybe 30% more likely with the DeRozan addition. With the TBD still being like some of those teams out west could still make some other changes potentially.
Tyler mentioned before Davis Bertans, and that you're all blowing up my questions before I can get to them. But I don't think I've ever been as intrigued by a three-player package of players that have been waived by a 21-win team as I was when the Hornets waived Bertans, Bryce McGowan's, and Pokuševski. I'm like, let's go. Let's time to go shopping. Is there anybody in that mix that you're like, Tyler confessed some predilections for Bertans, but is there somebody in there, or maybe more than one person in there that the Hawks should be intrigued by?
Bertans definitely, just because he's such a like he's going to shoot a lot of threes. Like he's good at shooting off of movement as well for his size. So like there's real value in that. Now he's a complete negative on the defensive end. But I mean he's somebody the Hawks should absolutely be looking to try to acquire, because I just think trading with shooting is just so there's just nothing you can do as a team, especially as a big shooter as Bertans. But Like I said, like I mean, the downside, the issue that I see with even Bertans coming is he won't be guaranteed to play every game, just based on the composition of the roster right now. Like the Hawks have a lot of forwards that got to play, and including your rookie and the guy you're about to give a big contract extension to, and Jalen Johnson. So, like it's kind of tough sledding, but unless you're going to willing to overpay for somebody like Bertans, which I don't know. But Poku's also he's intriguing. I thought he was figuring himself out for the Hornets. I'm kind of surprised they cut him. I thought he was actually playing some solid basketball for the first time over there. But
Right.
that's a pure like flyer move, like a young player, some similar to what the Hawks did with V Krejci. If the Hawks want to go that route, be like, hey, we want to take another lottery ticket and see what we can shake out from Poku. But those guys are probably my not I'm not sure about the rest of the market. Like Landry Shamet would be a good get. Bringing back Sadiq Bey would be a good get as well, but I don't know what his market is right now. So it's
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Bertans might be at a place where he gets a deal that's not guaranteed until after January 10. You can see how Sadiq's doing, and it might be like, okay, if we're going to roll Sadiq back in the rotation, we're going to do right by you and let you go find another team. That might be the kind of deal that makes sense for Bertans for the Hawks. I love McGowan's as a depth piece, a guy that you can develop, 6'7" guard who can defend with a lot of length. Poku to me is a guy that I mean I don't know if some team's going to be like, yeah, we'll roll the dice on a non-guaranteed contract, but I wonder if you can even get him on a
a two
contract
way.
with an exhibit 10 clause, bring him into camp and just see what you have for the month you have him in camp, right?
Yeah,
And then when you cut down to 15, see if he's like opens your eyes and feel like, okay, well, I mean, maybe if they keep Bruno, it's in a non-guaranteed deal or whatever that looks like, if Poku shows you something in camp, then you might have the option of kind of rolling him in. It's hard for me to know what the consensus perception of Poku is right now, because he's bouncing around a little bit. If teams like Charlotte doesn't see an opportunity to test drive you for a full year after that deal, to get Hayward, then like it seems like the
yeah.
consensus is not high right now. But to your point, like I think that's the kind of guy you want to kind of bring into camp, work with him for a month, see what you see and see what you learn about him, and see if he makes sense. I don't think there's anything wrong with that if they want to do that.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by Bertans. I think I like him as a piece if you're planning on keeping Capella. That he's the kind of offensive player that unlocks Capella a little bit. I'm not sure that they've had the kind of volume 3-point shooter who can kind of not shoot just from one spot the way maybe Sadiq tends to kind of play out of the corners a lot. I think I think somebody that can play up above the break with great comfort, that unlocks Clint's offensive game so that things can go better. But if you're planning on centering around your smaller centers, that might not work as well. But it would be fun to have Risache learn from somebody like that. Just cleaning up the footwork, getting reps alongside somebody like that, somebody to discuss those kind of things like that. That might be kind of fun for him to learn that way.
Yeah, his defense is an issue, but I think he's a guy that if the Hawks were able to get him, a lot of times when they played from behind the last couple of years, they just couldn't get shooting in at the 4 and the 5. Like I
Right.
mean, coaches want to put more shooting on the floor in the front court when they're playing from say 10 down halfway through the fourth quarter. And Bertans gives you a guy you can roll out there, right, and get more shooting on the court. And even if he's playing with Jalen and you go really, really small and just try to play fast and get up more threes, if he's creating space for Jalen to attack the rim, whatever that is, you could see scenarios situationally where it makes sense just to get more shooting on the floor at one of those positions. And there aren't many guys that have the size he has and have like Tyler said, that much size and can shoot on the move. Um, I mean, I think he's a guy who'd be a nice option for them to close games, especially when they're trying to play from behind.
Are there other things that have happened this week that you want to take a flyer at? I think Glenn said he was saving something for the end here. I don't know.
how I want to ask you guys, like, how are you feeling about the Sixers? Like, like I watched the Clippers last year. They looked old, right?
Yeah, it's a,
I like it. I love Tyrese Maxey, but he's still a little. I mean, he has for as good as he is, and as much as I enjoy him, he's still a little limited in terms of like how robust his creation skills are. He can do like 3 or 4 things, not like 8 to 10 things, if that makes sense, right? He's got the speed and he's kind of straight line and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, he's really developed as a shooter. But in terms of like, do I expect them to be better than the Knicks? Do I expect them to be better than the Bucks? Do I expect them to be better than, whoever else is like Indiana? I'm they're the team I'm like most perplexed by. They cleared all this cap space. They cleared so
so
much cap
much
space,
space.
and this
Yeah,
is what they did with it. And it just seems
it's.
like they could have done better.
I feel like I'm with you on this, Glenn. I'm like, I mean, Paul George. I mean, he's still it's a testament to his greatness that he's still this good when he's deteriorated so much as an athlete. Like he he's really purely turned into a jump shooter now. Like
Yep.
he does not attack the rim. He also doesn't rebound like he used to. Like the Sixers have consistently, even basically even during when they had Ben Simmons, the Sixers have consistently had athleticism problems, and they've consistently ran up into these issues uh, in the playoffs in particular, where like they, I mean, we kind of saw it with the Hawks, where like if you're able to run them up and down the floor, like they don't really have the athletes, and I still think if they're playing Caleb Martin at the 4, Paul George at the 3, they're going to struggle to rebound again, especially if Embiid's not on the floor. Going back with backup center being Andre Drummond, like that's just I mean Drummond's given good minutes with the Bulls, but like that's not like that's just another older player. Like where's the youth? You know, the the NBA's trending younger. Like the younger teams are winning, and I just think the Sixers are kind of, even though they cleared all this space, I think they would have been um, better served trying to acquire younger players. Like even trying to get a, I don't know how they do it, but try to get a Kaminga, try to get a you know, try to get a Josh Hart. He's not available to them anymore, but like just a more athletic player next to Embiid, just because like ultimately what Paul George is going to be is a catch and shoot 3-point guy for the Sixers. Like the there's only so much creation that's going to be going on with Embiid. Embiid's not a pick and roll player. He is a offensive engine to himself, and like everybody has to play in the Embiid system. I think Paul George is going to run up into the same problems that James Harden did for the Sixers. Like he's he's a more willing catch and shoot guy, but like that, these guys don't want to do that. Like Brandon Ingram, the Pelicans, to bring it back to Ingram, the Pelicans are struggling to get value for Ingram because he doesn't want to be a catch and shoot 3-point shooter. Paul George has openly talked about on his podcast about the stuff he doesn't want to do. He doesn't want to do the little things, and he wants to be more of an on-ball creator sometimes. Sometimes he want to be off-ball. Like Paul wants to take the easier route, but I can see him getting really annoyed that he's watching Embiid, get 15 free throws a game. Like I just, so I'm like, it's not like I feel like they kind of, because to me the Sixers were already a good team, a great team. I don't think this makes them any better or worse. I just think they're still going to go as far as Embiid can take them. And to me, until Embiid can show he can carry his regular season form into the playoffs, like I don't know if they got that much better. Like, teams aren't. I don't see the Celtics or the Knicks scared of Paul George, like as a creator. Just that part of his career is like, to me, Paul George is more of a play finisher now. So I'm kind of confused why, somebody like even like Tim Bontemps saying like they got the best big 3 in the league. I'm like, I don't even buy that to be true at all. So it's not like they're they're going to win 50+ games if Embiid is healthy. But like in the pressure cooker of the playoffs, like it, I just don't see it with Paul George. Like he doesn't have Kawhi Leonard's ability to just physically get by his man or overpower his man to get to his spots. Like Paul's more craft, more. So like I just think in the playoffs when it's time for Paul George to create against a like-sized defender, which he's going to play against in the playoffs, it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah. I mean, it really does come down to Embiid's health. And I mean, I know some Hawks fans won't agree with me, which is kind of maps what I'm going to talk about in a minute, energy wise. But I'd love to get one full season from it. I would enjoy watching one full healthy season from Embiid. I mean, he's incredible, right? I don't enjoy the falling down. I don't enjoy that stuff. And clearly he does that more when he gets tired. He's a big dude. It's understandable he gets tired. I think he has committed more to his conditioning the last couple of years. But I mean, I'd love to see like an honest, healthy season from him. It would be a unique experience to kind of get to see that. It doesn't feel like that's ever going to happen. Like I don't know why I should be optimistic that that's going to happen. But for him, for his sake, I hope he kind of finds a season where that's it, and we can get to watch him for a whole season. So and then the East, it didn't feel like there was much movement otherwise. Just Bucks around the edges, Celtics running it back, Pacers added kind of deeper on their roster. Like James Wiseman, they gave him I think $500,000 guaranteed was all that he ended up getting, and Miami like not really doing it. Like the East kind of stood pat, like for the most part, except for Philly using their cap space to do what they did. And it's just I don't know. Maury loves to focus on the top 3 to 4 spots on his roster, and then take whatever's available to fill 11 through 15 or whatever. And that's even like as awesome as Harden was in Houston, like in his absolute prime when he was in MVP level player, unquestionably, they never got there, and it just feels like that's what he's created again in Philly.
It's almost like it's a little bit too basic.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
like the majority of the NBA, you've got all these teams that are over the cap, and to do stuff, they've kind of got to maneuver, and they get these contracts there. They're like, you know what, this year we need to get rid of so and so to kind of make all the money and all the deals work. And it's like these other teams that you're going to negotiate with, they want to do sign-in trades and things like that. And it's like if the Sixers, if you just kind of say, okay, we got Embiid, we got Maxey, clear the books, then they can't really maneuver with those other teams. If there's somebody out there that's like available with sign and trade, it's like it just makes it's almost like they don't have, it's like the only thing they can do is go sign that one big name free agent, and that helps you win the offseason, but it's not enough.
You know what? Now that I think about it, Kevin, it's weird they didn't try to go for DeRozan. Because like full stop. Like DeRozan, I understand he has his flaws, and like they might be, but I feel like DeRozan could carry the offense when Embiid is off the floor because he can get to the free throw line, and like that's kind of an issue. Like Paul George can't do that anymore, and so like I think they, considering what DeRozan got in free agency, I think I would have, even though like Paul George is considered the better player, and I think he still is, but I feel like they could have gone DeRozan route, and then maybe, I mean, try to sign Hartenstein. I understand he's a center, but shore up backup center full time, and then re-sign all your other guys. Re-sign Batum, re-sign, try to re-sign, try to bring as much of the team back as you can. Like, I feel like that would have been a better use of their cap than just pouring it on one player, because like they're going to run it. All these teams run into the same issue: is that depth is so important. Like, you just got to have more outs if something doesn't work or not. And I just think this kind of went like they won the offseason, but like I'm looking at their team, I'm like, I don't think they got that much better. I think they're kind of the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it just feels like they're going to be sort of a top tier, but not really contending team unless things really go right. I mean, maybe there's a deadline move waiting out there that kind of changes their fortunes, and that would But it just doesn't seem like come October, like you're going to look at the Sixers and be like, wow, they've got this. It's going to be fine. Like they're going to be a really good East team that's not nearly as good as Boston.
Yeah, it feels like every team in the East is the same. Like, even though Porzingis looks like he's gonna miss significant time. And Al Horford, Horford's getting older, so like, but the Celtics system is just so like ingrained in how they play. Like it sometimes doesn't matter. Like especially in the regular season, if they're gonna get 45 to 53s up a game, and like they're just gonna be hard to beat if they're gonna still committed to the 5-out system. But I think the Hawks, to bring it back to them, I am fascinated how low the analysts are on what the Hawks have done. Just because it's like, to me, I feel like they filled their biggest need. Like, even point of attack defense has just been such a disaster, like absolutely embarrassing for 2+ seasons now. And I think they kind of shored that up in a way that impressed me, in the overall. And I think the Hawks have a chance to actually be up there. I don't know how good they're going to be relative to the East, but I feel comfortable on saying like this is not going to be they're going to be a better than 500 team. I think just based on what they have right now. But I'm it's wait and see on what they're going to do with the rest of the offseason. But like, I kind of like what they've done, and they're kind of deep right now at the moment. So, um,
what do you think about the the Hawks and Pelicans had to do something to make the money work in that deal? Ended up being Cody Zeller. What do you think about Cody Zeller being sort of the finishing touch on that trade? Is that like a real piece, or is it just money on the books? Like, what do you think there?
To me, it's not ideal. I mean, I think he's fine as a third center if you feel like, oh, he's got $3 million or whatever it is guaranteed, so we're gonna roll with him as our third center. I'd rather have Bruno. I'd rather you waive him and keep Bruno. Easy for me to say, it's not my money, and I don't know what else they're trying to accomplish under the second apron or under the tax or whatever the goal is, right? I don't know what the goal is there.
Right.
They're under the tax right now.
No, I know, but we don't know what else they're going to try to do, is what I'm saying.
Good.
That's what I'm saying, right? So for me, I'd rather have Bruno, but but he's a professional guy. Like, if you need a third guy who's going to go out for 4 minutes when somebody's in foul trouble, or give you 14 minutes when somebody's hurt or whatever, he's going to give you the baseline center play that you want, keep everybody organized, keep everybody, all that sort of stuff. So, not the end of the world. It's not what I would do, but not the end of the world if he ends up third center to me.
I think I'd be pretty surprised if he's on the team. I just honestly, I don't think he's even a third center anymore. I think he's just not an NBA player.
Yeah, I'd rather have Bruno for sure. I'd rather have
Yeah,
Bruno.
and like to me, I mirror what he is to what Mo Harkless. If people remember when the Hawks traded, I forget what they traded to get Mo Harkless back in return, where he was there, he's in training camp, and then he ultimately got waived when the season started, just because Mo just was no longer an NBA caliber basketball player anymore. I think this is something similar with Zeller. I think he's just salary flotsam. Like, maybe there's a trade where they want to hold on to the contract. I don't, and move it somewhere else. Or,
I mean,
but
there's a couple teams that have to get to the floor still, and you send him an unlikely second round, a top 55 predicted second round pick to a team who has to get to the floor. It might work, right? So,
and then they wait
basket,
right? So,
yeah, just money long. I think he's money laundering ultimately, but it is weird. It's strange that it was Zeller back and not like a different type of player. If considering they're giving him like guaranteed money, and it's above the minimum salary, so it's interesting. It's not ideal, but like ultimately, I just don't. I think he's a non-factor.
I agree. All right. I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and we'll have to be talking about some summer league games here pretty soon.
Okay, my closing thing: Hawks fans trying to clown DJ on Twitter. Stop it. I'm not impressed. Don't put that energy out there. Okay, I'm done.
All right. Good night, Bob.
Good night, Bob.
Good night, Bob.